Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a new listener, thanks very much for joining us. But if you are a regular listener, it's great to have you back. In this series, we speak to leaders in the world of business and people who've had tremendous career success. We speak to people across a wide range of industries all across the globe. We lead the way in conversation to understand what makes someone successful, listen to their stories of rising to the top, the challenges they've overcome, adversities faced, and what success means to them. We will also discuss the lessons learned along the way. Myself and my guests will give practical advice on how to grow your business and climb the career ladder. In the coming episodes, we will also speak to authors of many of the best-selling business titles and a handful of really well-known TEDx speakers. If you're someone that has a passion for business, then this is the podcast for you. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Ben Ivey from London. Ben is a CEO and founder of the Entrepreneur Lifestyle. He supports successful entrepreneurs to help them create their ideal lifestyle in the quickest and most sustainable way possible. As an entrepreneur, lifestyle expert, international speaker, and mentor, Ben has inspired thousands of entrepreneurs across the globe. In his program, Ben helps entrepreneurs overcome overwhelming stress and help them clarify their entrepreneur lifestyle and boost their business success. Ben is a highly requested speaker flying internationally. He's completed a TEDx talk in Mandarin Chinese and has shared the stage with Tony Robbins, Harrington, and Allan Kleynhans, and many other thought leaders. Ben, thanks very much for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you've got a really interesting story, sort of people that haven't come across you before. You were in this position on a destructive path of self-sabotage, burnout, and damaging relationships. And after this downward spiral, Ben became obsessed with the question, is it possible to build a successful business while living a great lifestyle simultaneously? Tell us a bit about what you did when you was on this kind of journey and a bit about your background before we kind of come on to the lessons that you're sharing with people today and the mentoring that you're doing.
Sure. So I ran a couple of businesses before. I ran an import and export business, and then I was running an app based in Silicon Valley. And as you mentioned, I was on this path where I genuinely was working 7 days a week, and I'd see people take a weekend off. And Jason, I was thinking, these people, they are lazy entrepreneurs. I mean, who do they think they are taking a day off, right? They're entrepreneurs. What are they doing? And I genuinely had that mindset of go, go, go. We've got to be able to really build the business, make lots of money, and then ultimately inspire people. And I really went down this path of self-sabotage. I mean, I had my team, I was starting to grow it, but I was just started burning out and really not feeling very fulfilled in the process. And then on top of that, what really knocked me off course was losing my father to suicide. And he was my best friend. I saw him a day before, and it was just a crazy experience to go from such a high running my business to now suddenly losing someone that matters so much to me and having no idea why this occurred and what happened. So I quit my business and I really started a search as to what is it that really matters to people in life? Why do we do what we do? And why is it that we create these parallel worlds, one which people see and the other which is the reality that what we experience? And if we think about nowadays with COVID and social media, it's so apparent, this sort of fake persona people put out versus the reality that's going on. And for me, I really see that there's a lot of people living in these parallel worlds, which is a real challenge for entrepreneurs.
I can't imagine the grief and you going through that experience with your father. But when you talk about the parallel worlds, what do you mean by that? To sort of put it quite plainly.
Sure. Well, what I mean by that is that when you ask an entrepreneur, how's it going?
Uh-huh.
9.5 times out of 10, you'll get great. And then you ask, how's it really going? How's it actually going? Because the truth is, entrepreneurs are very optimistic. So on the surface, they have to be positive and everything's fine. When the truth, there's often a lot of challenges going on. And what I see is that a lot of people at the top isolate themselves. So actually, they're incredibly stressed out. They are depressed. They're overwhelmed. But people won't see that. That's what I mean by the parallel world, right? The reality of the business versus what people perceive.
Was the experience that you went through with your father, was that kind of quite eye-opening into the parallel worlds, or was that something that kind of came for you, that learning about the experiences of stress that people are finding? Was that kind of separate to that, and was it just that triggered that kind of realization for you?
To be honest, I think it was a combination of things, but certainly seeing my
Right.
dad as such a giver, such a fun individual. When I think of him, often I think of Robin Williams as something very similar, where
Right.
someone gives light, they're so fun, and they give to everyone else, but fundamentally they don't give to themselves. And it was an
Mm.
incredibly big shock for me when that happened to be able to go through it. And that's really where I started to attempt to figure out what makes humans click and really understand the fundamentals of how to live a really fulfilled life as we build our businesses and as we build successful careers.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think when you're at the top of a business, you've got to kind of resonate positivity, motivation, get your workforce going. But I totally agree with you. I think being at the top is often a very lonely place, and a lot of people, might not want to show weakness in saying, "Listen, I'm struggling, I need help," and so on. Well, is that something that you've kind of found through going through this journey? Is it even hard to get people to open up and sort of say that they've got these problems? Because I guess sometimes where do you go?
Sure, and I think it depends on the people that you're with. By no means am I saying that all leaders need to just break down in meetings and say they're incredibly depressed and they're struggling. But it's important to be able to have the right people beside you to help support you through challenging times. And whether that's close friends, whether that's other entrepreneurs or business coaches or mentors, people that can support you is incredibly important. And through the work that I've done all over the world, what I often see is that the story changes, but the pattern's the same, right? I'm overwhelmed, I'm overworked, I'm constantly focusing on the business. And what I see is actually very common is this: when I have this, then I will addiction, which is the when I have the
Mm.
success, then I'll focus on my family. Then I'll focus on my health. Then I will give back to the world. And it's this prerequisite that I see, which often trips entrepreneurs up when they're on their journey.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's always, and I think I've been through this myself. You get to that next milestone, you get to that next level of turnover, head count, or whatever it is, and everything's going to be fine. Then I'm going to be happy. Once I've hit that next benchmarker. And actually, I spoke about this in a couple of episodes before with an author about your life. You've got to kind of manage it in kind of segments. But to kind of rewind before we kind of come to the learnings that you've come across and the entrepreneur lifestyle coach academy that you run, tell us a bit about how you kind of got into business. What age was you, and how did, before we kind of got to the point that you was having this downward spiral and kind of self-sabotage burnout, tell us a bit about how you got into business and what was your journey into being in a position of leadership.
Sure. Well, I first started when I was at school and I was selling, if you remember chocolate Freddos, Jason, do you remember them?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
oh yes, 10p in my day.
They were 10p in my day as well. And they're not like atrocious. I think they're 20 or 25p now. It's a joke. And
Inflation.
yeah, it's crazy, huh? So in my day, right, or in our day, it was.
They're smaller too, but there we go. We won't go down the chocolate path right now.
So I remember selling them at school, and I would buy a box of about 40 for £4, and I'd start to sell them on for about 20p. And unfortunately, my business got shut down after a couple of weeks when 20p's and 20p's were just falling out of my locker left, right, and center. And I sort of got the entrepreneurial bug from there. And as I started, I then looked into young enterprise when I was at school. I did lots of entrepreneurship at university. And that's where I set up my first business, which was an import and export business where I was importing bags from Pakistan and selling them around the UK to different universities and having that sports bag
Mm.
business. That was my first real taste of entrepreneurship. And then I ended up going on something called the Startup Bus. I'm not sure if you ever heard of this, but
No.
when I did, I thought it sounded utterly ridiculous. It was a 72-hour journey whereby you would set up a business whilst you were on a bus going through Europe. So I think we got into Manchester and then we started going through all these different places and then ended up Berlin and then finished off in Vienna or something.
Wow.
And it was a really cool experience where I pitched an idea, which
Yep.
was a virtual reality platform to help people learn and memorize. And I ended up coming third in Europe with my team. And that's where we started to expand. I started to fly in and out of China. And I started to build that network as we started to build the platform. And then we ended up going to Silicon Valley. And that's, instead of going uphill, that's kind of when it went downhill for me.
Why?
I think ultimately, when you're in an environment where everyone is so focused on investment and money and building the next unicorn or the next big thing. I think that for me, it was just this almost obsession of I really want to make this successful. And for me, I definitely had this when I have this then addiction of for me, I wanted to inspire people. I thought it was really important to myself, but I felt that I had to achieve so much success beforehand before I could
Mm.
start to really have an impact on people's lives. And that was really driving me.
And that's kind of when it was at that stage when you was involved with Silicon Valley. That's when this kind of downward spiral started.
Yeah, and I certainly noticed it
Mm.
when I wasn't taking much time off, and it was just this constant focus on work and this never-ending focus on anything else. Like my health, relationships went downhill, and it was an incredible challenging time for me
Mm.
to be able to really look back on when I think of what I know now. I was doing everything wrong.
Right. How old was you at that point then?
So I was probably around 20, 21, 22 at that time.
Oh wow! So you kind of had these realizations, very early on in your life. You kind of done a lot by the age of 21.
Yeah.
Okay, and sort of to bring it back to current day, how old are you now?
So now I'm 27.
Right. Okay. So you kind of got to that point. You had this moment, and then how did this kind of all go from where you was out there in the States to becoming the founder of Entrepreneur Lifestyle?
Sure. Well, ready for a whirlwind. So when everything happened
I'm embraced.
with my dad, I was feeling really unsure about what best to do. So I ended up
Yeah.
flying out to China, and I lived with a guy who was a master NLP practitioner. So NLP is neuro linguistic programming, and it's the patterns of the mind, how we think. And I started learning NLP from him, and I started to gain some different skills to be able to help people. So I started teaching neurolinguistic programming out in China. I was teaching productivity. I was teaching some public speaking. And I started to really help anyone that I could with different areas of their life. And I really had this thirst to understand what happened to my dad. Like, why are people suicidal? And also, is it possible to build a business, live a great lifestyle at the same time? Like, is that even a manageable feat? So I attended lots of events by Tony Robbins and like Andy Harrington, Power to Achieve, all these different self-development breakthrough events, really to understand at a fundamental level what helps humans to change. And then I started to learn from Tony Robbins, and I found that I really connected with how he helped people. So I started to gain these skills on this journey. And then I remember being in China, having very little money in my bank account, thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm running free events. I've got half the audience. They don't even speak English. Like, I don't know what is going on. And I'm
Right.
thinking, can I even make this work? And at this point, I was branded as the fulfillment artist. I was helping people become incredibly
Mm.
fulfilled in their lives. And I was running these 2-day events. And I had 3 people attend this 2-day event. Not many. I had to grab along a few friends, and it was really 80 pound a head. And I'm thinking, I've got to run these 7 days a week to make any money here. This isn't working.
Yeah.
And then I
Mm.
had a lady come up to me, and she said, Ben, we're looking for a relationship coach. And I said, that's fantastic. I know a great one. So I recommended this lady. And they said, no, we want to work with you.
Right.
And I said, are
Okay.
you serious? Of course, I can definitely help, right? I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? And this is where I started on that journey of how can I really over deliver value? So I think the first clients there I took on for about 4 grand for 6 months, and I made a huge impact on them. I was doing a lot of stuff offline and then a little bit online because I started to travel at that point. And it was a real testing time of helping them with their relationship. I had also entered my long distance relationship at that point with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. So I was living this jet setting lifestyle of starting to take on clients
Mm.
offline. So I'd speak offline, they'd get attracted to me, and then I'd do some online coaching. And I'd fly to see my girlfriend in Los Angeles. I'd fly back home to the UK just to be with friends and family. And then I would be going to China for business. And I did this nonstop until this year.
Wow. Wow. And how was you find? Were these people kind of finding you, or was it the fact that you was kind of you started flying everywhere internationally. You were picking people up kind of as and when you travel around the world.
Yeah, well, I genuinely had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I was just booking as many talks as I could
Yeah.
and just sharing in the most authentic way I could. I would cry on stage, I would share my story, and I would just
Mm,
attract different people who would be really mesmerized by the different talks that I gave. And it was a really fun experience. I started working with people from all walks of life. But there'd be a divorced lady, there would be someone who's just starting their business, I would
mm,
have a corporate lady who's incredibly unfulfilled. I'd get a partner at a law firm. Like all these different types of people started to reach out and connect with me. So I started to literally help people from all walks of life. And then 3 years ago, I had a guy called Mark come up to me who was the same name as my dad. And he said, "Ben, could you teach me what you do?" And Jason, at this point, I wholeheartedly said, "Absolutely not."
right. Okay.
And we were laughing about it. And the reason that I said
Yeah.
that is that,
Right.
do you have any idea how long it would take me to attempt to teach you like all this different knowledge and skills and experiences that I've had to really make you outstanding? Because for me, I really wanted to make this person outstanding at coaching and to be an awesome speaker on stage, not just an okay one. So I think it was about 3 or 4 months later, I dropped him a message and I said, "I'm ready now. Let's do it. It's going to take a year. I'm not comfortable doing it any shorter because I really wanted to make them very good." And that started this journey of then training other people to do what I do as well.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like a lot of the kind of motivation behind what you do is it sounds like there's kind of elements of, mental health and people maybe struggling with that and you kind of helping them in that regard. But it also sounds like there's this kind of deep rooted kind of built-in desire that you've got in order to kind of help people. Where's this all kind of come from, this kind of real desire to get out there and help people?
To be honest, I think that I'd always had this desire to inspire people. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until I lost my dad that I really thought that there
Mm,
was an opportunity for me to genuinely help people at a really big level. And it's true, it did start with a lot of mental health because I wanted to understand why people get depressed, why people are suicidal. And
mm,
I did different trainings, different courses, and I've worked with multiple suicidal clients. And
yeah.
Jason, I'll tell you this story. I'm in China. I'm at this event, and it's by one of my very close friends called Raf Adams. It's called the Suited Monk. Very cool dude. And I'm sitting there in the audience, and I'm chatting to this lady called Anna next to me. And she starts chatting to me about what she does, and she says, "Yeah, Ben, I'm suicidal." And I was like, "What?" And she says, "I don't see myself living past 35." And I said, "Right, how old are you now?" She goes, "I'm 34 and a half." I'm like, "Oh, great. So now we got a
Oh,
timeline."
wow.
And
Wow.
I can't tell you the experience of working with someone where I've got them on the phone, I'm doing
Mm,
techniques, and they're saying, "I want to kill myself. I'm really unsure." And this is an entrepreneur who's very successful, flying to New York, doing fashion shows, who just goes through these oscillations of depression and then happy and then depressed again. And I feel so blessed and lucky that I can support someone like that
mm.
as they go through their life in a way which is so much more happy, fulfilling, and successful at the same time.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of mental health. I've been there, got the t-shirt myself. I've had my own struggles, and it's not easy running and growing a business, and it does come. What you've got to watch mental health. I really agree with that. To kind of bring it to sort of a bit more present day of what you're doing. You've kind of gone through this journey. You've created the entrepreneur lifestyle. You're now mentioned that you just recently stopped that traveling. Tell us a bit about what you're doing current day, because it just sounds absolutely fascinating.
Sure. So nowadays, I'm working with entrepreneurs who want to become more efficient in their business and boost their business revenue. And ultimately, that's to live a great lifestyle whilst they build their business.
Right.
So I ended up digitalizing most of the events and content that I was running in different seminars over the years and made my entrepreneur lifestyle accelerator program so that I wouldn't have to teach the same thing over and over again. So it's actually been a nice year just to digitalize a lot of the work that I do. And then I also
Do
have
you
been,
find that you still manage to get from, sorry to interrupt
oh
you,
no,
but from
please.
taking that online, are people still able to get the same Ben Ivey experience and the same level of learning from it with it being online?
Sure. So for me, I think that there is nothing better than being offline and having a fully immersive experience. With
Yeah.
that said, I think that if you can deliver the correct information in a way that people can consume online and give the right tools that they need, and then I have different coaching. So whether it's me or one of my trainers going through that program with them, I find that's incredibly effective. For me, I've been doing online coaching for most of the time I've been coaching now, and I have to say it is so much easier for me to do something offline, to do something online than offline from a coaching standpoint with people on a regular basis. Now, with that said, I will always go back to offline events when everything opens up. But I think that
Mm.
what I've created now is a fantastic way for people to have an immersion where they can really come out the other side with some tremendous results.
What's the main things that you've learned in business then? Because it sounds, fulfillment, but one of the things that you're really trying to help clients and people that you've worked with feel, not just offline but online. But what are the main things that you've learned about business now? Being in this place where you've met many, many, many successful people. You've obviously mentioned the likes of Tony Robbins, Andy Harrington, and so on. What lessons have you kind of learned from business?
So a few lessons that I want to share. The first one is be careful who you listen to. And the reason why I say that is I've listened to some multimillionaires at different points in my life, and it was the great advice, but at the wrong time. And I really want
Right.
to bring that home because I think that there's so many different pieces of advice out there which are all great. But if you're not at the right time in your business or in your life to execute on that, it can actually really, really trip you up. So that was something that I think is really important for people to take home. Just to be careful who you listen to.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I think people might be listening to this and think, well, I've had advice. How do I know if the advice I've got is advice that I should act on at this point in my career?
Sure, let me give you an example. So when I was first starting on my coaching journey, I had a one-on-one with Andy, multimillionaire, for a day, and he was saying that Ben, you need to write a book, you need to build a course, you need to do everything online, and you need to start to bring up your base. You need to build a massive audience,
Mm.
and it's great advice. But for me, my focus was I need to change some people's lives. I need to get some cash coming in. I can't spend loads of time attempting to do Facebook ads, building groups, doing these things, writing books. So for me, it was the wrong advice for me at that point in time.
Right.
What I teach now and what I think is a better approach is to build depth, not width. What I mean by that is build deep relationships with people who you can genuinely have an impact on, as opposed to connecting with thousands of different people. And you see it now, right? I'm sure on LinkedIn you get about 30 requests a day from random people asking you for different things. There's very
Yeah,
few that
yeah.
actually want to build a deep relationship with you. They've actually read your profile. They ask you an interesting question. They're actually genuinely interested in you as a human being as opposed to a number. And I think
It's
that
rare.
is the
It's
difference.
rare.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think there's so many people lacking that human connection. They're just sort of spreading this really wide net that it wastes a lot of time and it's a lot of noise and they don't really get a result.
It's the scattergun approach. I always think that you're right in what you're saying. I get approached by many, 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 many people, but it's the kind of scattergun, mass mail template, and it's when someone actually has a real interest in you. It's a really beautiful thing, and I think in business, I've met some absolutely fantastic people over the years, but they don't come along often. It's but when I do come across someone, it's absolutely great, and I think that as I've evolved and gone along on my business journey, my perspectives has changed in life. Even who I relate to has changed. But I think it's because I think a lot of the lessons that you've learned, I've learned, but I've learned the very kind of hard way. I've had to go through a lot of these kind of adversities throughout my career to kind of make these connections and try and find out where I fit in the world. So I think you're totally right in what you're saying there. But have you learned any other lessons that you think are kind of good to share on the Career Success podcast, Ben?
Yeah, most certainly. I think that you have to invest in yourself because your business growth will never
Mm.
outgrow your personal growth. And I genuinely mean that because I see so many people who are stuck in perfectionism, analysis paralysis. I think nowadays we're in this information overload, but we're starving of wisdom. So what is
Mm.
incredibly challenging in business nowadays is figuring out who can you listen to, who can give you the right advice to actually help you move forward. So for me, I think the best piece of advice I have had is really investing in myself so I can be a better business owner. And it's one of the ways in which I've moved myself forward, that you are the best investment for your business. And one of the other things is that people don't pay you what you're worth, they pay what you think you're worth. And I think for those who are consultants or coaches or working for themselves, self employed, deciding their own prices, it's a really important lesson to take away, because I've definitely undersold myself for many,
Mm.
many parts of my life when I really didn't know the value that I was truly giving to the people I was serving.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's about value, and I'm a big believer of that. I think if you price yourself cheap, people are gonna they draw conclusions from that, and you should sell yourself based on value. I totally agree. You mentioned that you invest in yourself. What do you do to invest in yourself?
Sure. So I'll give you an example. So when this year happened with COVID, the first thing I did was got myself a business coach who I knew was doing incredibly well online, because I had an offline to online business, in that I would
Mhm.
do speaking, I would do all these different events, and then I convert them online. I have not really done online to online before, so I wanted to get a business coach, and that was one of the reasons why I rebranded, so that I could more efficiently share what I do online, where people would actually resonate with what I was doing. So that's one of the first things. And then I invest in hiring a marketing team. I'll invest in someone to teach me finances and investing. And I think that for
Mm.
me, it's figuring out what area do you want to improve, and then getting help with that. And I'll share a funny story that I think hits home with this. So when I was first visiting my girlfriend in San Diego, and I'm not sure if you've been to America, Jason, but the plates
Many
there are
times,
okay.
many times.
So the plates there are
Uh,
twice as big, right? Now, as a British person, it's polite to finish everything on your plate. So I'm already at a
yeah.
disadvantage, right? This is the challenge, but I'm British. I'll be polite. I'll finish everything. So I'm down in San Diego. I'm
Uh,
finishing this food. And then her family keeps giving me more food. And Jason, I'm genuinely thinking these people are challenging me. Like, can I finish this food, right? Little do I know about the Asian culture about sharing love through food. So I genuinely gained 30 pounds in a month. It was unreal, unreal. And the reason why I'm sharing this story is that when that
yeah.
happened, I was thinking, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like, I'm working from home, I'm on a laptop. How am I going to lose this? Like, my back hurts, my body hurts. So I immediately hired like an online health coach to just figure out what to do with me so I could follow a plan and make it happen. And I think that, despite it being funny that I gained it in a month, it took me
Mm.
6 months to lose. And I think that it just goes to show how important it is to have those routines and systems that you can learn from
Mm.
other experts, because it's much easier
Mm.
to fix something before it gets broken than to
Yeah.
attempt to build something after you've really gone downhill.
We're quite similar ages, Ben. When I hear you talk, you've just got this level of wisdom of I believe in old souls and things like that. But the way you kind of process things and the lessons that you've learned, it's fascinating to hear. In terms of sort of success, what does success mean to you now? Is your kind of idea of success and it's how it kind of resonates? Has it changed over recent years, or how do you define it?
Sure, I just define success as money. No, I'm joking. So,
Right. I knew that wasn't true.
so for me, I think that obviously that was what I previously thought, and success is, defined person to person. And for me, it's waking up every day and just having an awesome day. And whether
Mm,
that is me jumping up and down on my rebounder, preparing to do outreach, or talking to a client call, or being able to transform someone's life, or doing a podcast like this where I'm here, where I'm having fun, I'm enjoying myself. To me, that is success, because it's so easy to just focus on this destination. And you were
yeah.
mentioning previously, right? You wanted to hit these revenue goals, and then what? But
Mm,
if I can enjoy this journey of entrepreneurship, of life, all the ups and downs, and still have a smile on my face, to me, I think that is the joy of what it is to be alive, to be human, and to be successful.
I absolutely agree with you. I totally agree with what you said there. In terms of one thing I've picked up on is you seem to reach out to professionals in different aspects of your life. You've got this problem, but I want to go to the person who is going to help me sort that. And it seems like you've got this kind of ability to think, right, I'm going to reach out to someone with a really mastery level of knowledge and get them to kind of fast track you. It seems like sort of finding quick ways to propel success in just your business life, but it sounds like your personal life as well. Is that where's that kind of come from? Is that tell
Sure.
me a bit about that?
Sure. Well, for me, I think it's about leapfrogging. And what I mean
Yeah.
by that is that there are so many people out there who are incredibly intelligent and have spent years mastering a craft. Why
Hmm.
can't we just learn something small off them and move that forward? And the truth is, I have done this in my personal life. I've done this in business. I remember when I was younger, seeing someone do street dance and thinking, Jason, that's too cool. I need to teach myself that, right? So I remember seeing a teacher, like he was
Yeah.
amazing. And I thought, yeah, can you teach me that? When I have an issue with, let's say, marketing, I'm saying, can you help me with that? If I'm doing it like a
Mm.
TED talk, if I'm learning Chinese, I want to learn off someone who's incredibly good at what they're doing so that I can learn from really the best people. Because when you're learning football, right, you don't come to me. You want to go to Messi because the level of knowledge and wisdom and depth that he can tell you, even if it's just a small tweak, can actually
Mm.
help you in such a big way as you move forward in your life. So for me, it just cuts the journey short. And as opposed to me absorbing a lot of free information, because the truth is that there's loads of free information out there. I would much prefer to pay to get specific knowledge from someone who really knows what they're doing so that I don't have to waste time attempting to find it myself.
Yeah, and I think this kind of reaching out to people and asking for help, whether it's help or mentoring or whatever, is something you touched on at the start of this episode. It's people kind of almost when you're in entrepreneur mode and you're putting on that positive front to everybody, and sometimes you can be hurting on the inside, not feeling great and so on because you're not reaching out and asking for help. But it sounds like that's something that you've kind of been doing from the very early days in business, and it sounds like it's something by reaching out and going to these experts in their field, it's really kind of helped and propelled you forwards, which I think is an absolute great thing. And I think that I'm exactly the same when it comes to mentors or people who can help me get somewhere. I'm all about energy. I'm much more of a wanting to meet someone in person type of guy rather than always going online and just reading a kind of generic article. I
Yes.
always want to see the relevance and how that kind of affects me. I could talk to you for ages. I've already ran over time, but quite frankly, Ben, I don't care because we're having a great time. Just tell us a bit about the TED Talk in Mandarin Chinese, and because that's in itself, highly impressive. I know a lot of Cantonese speaking people, and in China they learn English, but there's not a lot of English people I know who've learned Chinese doing it the other way round.
Okay, so I actually was meant to do a TED talk 4 years ago in Chinese, and it actually got cancelled the day before by the Chinese government. And I was thinking, "Oh, this is awful. I'm never going to get another opportunity." And I remember
But the
Evelyn,
Chinese government.
yeah. So in China, it's a little different. If they say no TED talks, you're not doing a TED talk, right? It gets cancelled. So
Oh, so it has to be pre-approved.
yeah, so they can remove things whenever they like, really. And I was fortunate in that because I made connections in TED, I've been
Mm.
training people to do TED talks for actually quite a while now. So I know the organizer quite well, and I remember saying to her, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this TED talk in Chinese," and she said, "Ben, I don't think you should. Like your Chinese is okay, but you've never done a Chinese talk on stage, right? There's going to be hundreds of people. I'm not sure if your Chinese level is good enough." And I said, just let me give it a go. And I do like challenging myself, Jason. And I think this is another time in my life where I said, I'm going to challenge myself. And be it doing, Wim Hof, Iceman breathing in Italy, or teaching myself the wolf whistle, I like having these different challenges that I give myself. So I had the
Doing a
TED
TED
talk.
talk in itself is a challenge, let alone doing it in Mandarin. And tell us, how did it all go? And
Oh,
and
okay.
is it available to people in English? I guess is the secondary question.
Yes, there's subtitles on it. I'll share it with
Right.
you after this. You can put
Okay.
it in the show notes. But I'm basically learning this entire speech off by heart because my Chinese isn't good enough to just give it a go. So I'm thinking if I screw up one thing, like everything's gone. So
Right.
the first thing is I learn this entire speech and then I cut it down, they change it. And a few weeks before, I realize, oh my God, it doesn't really matter what I say. I have to use emotion and body language. So I
Mm.
remember attempting to do this TED talk and I would say five things. And then about 3 seconds later, I would move my hand for five. It was just all higgledy piggledy. It was completely out of order. And I remember finally, getting to the day, standing up on stage and going with the flow. The Chinese audience is laughing at bits I didn't think they would laugh at, so I'm kind of being put off a jolt here. And then it gets to the middle of my speech, and then Jason, I go blank,
Right.
nothing, diddly squat, and I'm on stage and I'm staring at
Oh
hundreds of
no.
people, and I'm thinking, what on earth do I do? So I look at a member of the audience, and if you watch
I'm
the
sitting on the edge of my seat now just at the story.
so I'm looking at this audience, and in my head this is going at like 100 miles an hour, but in slow motion it's, oh my god, what am I going to do, what am I going to do, I've completely forgotten. So I just look at a member of the audience and I say, woman ban, which is like, so what do we do? And this poor Chinese guy just looks at me and he just shrugs his shoulders, right? And it's enough time for me to be able to remember what my next sentence is, and then I carry on with the speech and sort of go with the flow. But I managed to hide it. I've got to say, I thought I hid it pretty well. So you can check that out for that moment there. But that was
I'll be looking that up.
definitely a different experience for me.
And just to kind of bring this round to some of the people who listen to this show, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe, we get a lot of people who listen to this show who are starting out in business. Maybe they're someone that's left university. And I do think, yes, it's a difficult time with COVID at the moment and it's not easy, but I still think there's a lot of opportunity around. I think there is opportunity for people to go out there and work for themselves and start a relevant business. But what advice would you give to someone who is maybe a graduate or someone that's thinking about starting a business or even in their career in general? What would you say to those people?
Sure. I'd like to share a story because I think it hits home
Sure.
better. And that is that I want you to imagine that everyone is on a boat and they're all circling this island, and everyone's got a huge telescope and they're looking for this perfect diamond, right? So they just go
Right.
round and round, and there's hundreds of boats and everyone's there with a telescope and they're all thinking, when will I see this diamond? Because when I see the diamond, then I'll go to the island. But it's only when some crazy person decides to jump off the boat, swim to the island, that they start to see the diamonds, the rubies, all these different other gems they would have never have seen back on the boat. And for those listening, there are too many people nowadays waiting for the perfect environment, the perfect opportunity, the perfect job to then get the ball rolling. And what I think is incredibly important, especially nowadays, is just to have the first step,
Mhm.
to figure out what is the step that at least moves you forward, as opposed to waiting for everything to be perfect to then actually get going.
And I think a lot of people, when they're thinking about working for themselves, they think, well, what can I do? What idea can I have? What is the next step for me? How would you go about identifying that step? Is there kind of a process, that you would go through in order to work out, where I'm going to move to next?
Yeah, there actually is. And it's the same process that I do when I'm doing decision making, whether I'm taking
Right.
on a new business coach or a new person. And I look at all the options that I have. And then I go through my pros and cons, right? And I think, what does this benefit give me really when I look into my overall outcomes? Because maybe for someone's career, the most important thing they want to achieve is travel. And then they care about salary, and then they care about all these other things. So it's
Mhm.
important to list your outcomes and figure out what is it that you desire, create your options, and then figure out, well, what is my best option right now, and
Right.
just do it. Give it a go for 3 months, a year, however long you want to give yourself for that, so that you can really make some massive progress. And the reason why I say 3 months is because I break my life down into power years. What I mean by this is a period of 3 months where I can fully immerse myself and focus on one thing and get something done. Because
Mm.
it's so easy for us, especially nowadays, to think in calendar years. And I've got to be honest, the amount of people that set a calendar year, they sat down in January, Jason, they were thinking, I know what I'm going to achieve in 2020. I'm going to achieve all these wonderful things, right? And
Yep.
suddenly February hits and all goes terrible. So 3 months, I think, is a long enough period of time to really immerse yourself in something and figure out if you like it. And it gives you that clear focus and perspective, and then you can do something different. If you do that
Mm.
for 4 ideas in a year, you will learn so much more than dabbling in different things and never really committing to something.
Mm. I think what the learning from that is focus. It's not diluting your focus, and I think that by having these 3 month segments, I think is exactly right. It allows you to really get your teeth stuck into one particular thing, and I think a lot of people, they go through this process, don't they? Of, I'm going to start this. This needs to happen, and they get lost in so many things that the focus just isn't there. Ben, we are out of time. We must do another podcast because there's already a whole page full of stuff I wanted to talk about. about you working at corporates and large companies and all sorts of things you learned there. But we are out of time. But if people want to learn more about the entrepreneur lifestyle, your coaching, your online business, where can they go?
Sure. So you can connect with me like on most social media platforms. Just type in Ben Ivey, so Ivey, and then you can go to my website. So it's Ben and then a hyphen and ivey.com, and you can just drop me a message, and either myself or my team will get back to you and share any free resources or programs that we have to offer.
Thank you very much. That's Ben Ivey. You heard it there. If you want to find out more, go to ben-ivey.com. I'm Jason Connolly. This is the Career Success Podcast. Until next time, goodbye.